is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Limited Resources. This episode number 563. My name is Marshall. I'm one of your Limited Resources, and joining me online all the way from Denver, Colorado, we're back, baby. Back-to-back shows this week. It's Luis Scott-Vargas. Hi, Luis.
Hey, what's going on?
How's it going today? How's your day been?
Well, so
you've had some ups and downs. I know this.
As I left to go get lunch, I noticed that the front bumper of my car was like a little detached, which I didn't like. And I'm like looking at it, and I was also walking at the same time. And then all of a sudden I was falling because I apparently walked off the side of the steps.
That sucks, man.
Not my finest moment. So I kind of twisted my ankle up. Not thrilled about that, but my car is fine, and I think I'm going to be all right. And
you got a burrito.
I did get a burrito. Ultimately, I did fulfill that particular task.
So the story ended happy.
It ended something.
Yeah.
I am excited to get a second show in this week. We decided that Zendikar dropped. Everything's going on, especially since it's out on Arena, it's out on Magic Online, and people are jamming. It's just a great time to really just get people a little more info and background, since the set reviews, I think, are a good starting place for card evaluation, but actually diving into what the format is like. And there's some really cool stuff going into this format that we're both excited to talk about.
Totally. And we both had a chance to do a bunch of drafts already. So lots of stuff to talk about here on our Zendikar Rising First Impression show. Before we do, though, let's talk about our sponsor, channelfireball.com. That's a place to go really for everything you need Magic related. They're kind of the one-stop shop. And that includes selling your cards back to them. You can go through and look at the prices for any card that you'd like to sell, and then decide which ones you want on a card-by-card basis. You package them up, you send them in, and they will give you money for them, or even store credit with a nice bonus if you're interested in that. There's also another way to do it. It's a newer way. It's called U-Box We Buy, where you package up a collection. Basically, like if you got a long box full of cards or however many, and you're like, I just need these out of my life and I need some money for them, and I don't want to, do the thing where I'm shopping all around, spending all this time and effort to ship them different places and check different prices and do all the nitty gritty. You can just package them up and send them into Channel Fireball. They will go through them, work up a quote for you, and then you'll get the quote in your email, and you can decide, yeah, that sounds good, get these things done, or you know what, I'd rather hold on to them for that, and you can have your cards back. And there's information over at CFB there. Of course, while you're there, you can get Zendikar Rising. I don't know if it's still technically on pre-order as of this recording. I believe it is. But at any rate, you can either pre-order or order depending on what day you're listening to this episode of the podcast. But you can get your hands on this set right now. And it's a good one. We talked a couple of episodes with BDM about ways that you can play against your friends with paper cards over webcam or using a couple of different services. And, sealed. Fire it up. Get a box. Your friend gets a box. And you can start cracking packs and playing some sealed deck over Skype or whatever program you want to use. I found that to be really fun. Again, me and my buddy Adam did that, and I definitely recommend it. You can get the box from channelfireball.com. This show is also brought to you by you via the Patreon. That's patreon.com/limited resources. This is the way that most content creators these days monetize. Basically, they, say, look, I want to keep creating this content that you like. And, but I want to be able to put myself into this or get the supplies that I need or, keep going, week after week, month after month, that type of thing. And this is how you can say, you know what? I like it that I get this thing. And I want to give something back to you. It can be a very small amount. It can be like $1, right? It doesn't have to be anything crazy. The truth is that it all adds up on the other end of it. And that's kind of the way that the model works. And, it's honestly because of people on the Patreon that the show's still going. So we want to say thank you to everybody. And if you're interested in joining, you can go to patreon.com/limited resources. We'd love to see you over there. We got a couple of crack-a-packs to do here, Luis, and then we'll dive into. Well, we want to talk about the double face land things. We'll talk about the party mechanic. We're going to talk about some archetypes, some specific cards, and a couple of revisits on some questions that we had coming into the set as well. And then we'll call it a show. So let's do the first crack-a-pack.
Well, before we get to that, actually, we've got something cool to tell the listeners about.
Oh, right. I forgot. Yeah, tell them.
Yes. So we mentioned, a couple weeks ago, actually, by mention, I mean, threw down the gauntlet and challenged the Lords of Limited. So I'd like to say that, with great pleasure that we've got a 3v3 coming. So how that's going to work is On the resources side, we've got, of course, Marshall, myself.
Sorry. No. We wanted to name us the Warriors, and they're the cowards, right? That's.
Oh, yeah. Cowards can't block Warriors. Sure. Mm-hmm. So on the Warriors side, we've got myself, Marshall, and Andrew Beckstrom, BK, who does constructed resources with me. Mm-hmm. And on the coward side, the Lords of Limited.
Even though they gleefully accepted our challenge.
Yeah, of course. These guys are great. This is going to be a lot of fun. We've got Ethan, Ben, and then Alex Nicolette, Court of Calls, who does a lot in their Discord. Of course, he writes content for Channel Fire, but also has a Limited Level Ups podcast. So really looking forward to this. How it's going to work is we've got the three of us battling against the three of them. We're going to do a team draft. It's going to be so the seats alternate. So it'd be like I'd be passing to Ethan, who's passing to Marshall, who's passing to Ben, who's passing to BK, who's passing to Alex. And then we're each going to play a match against the other team, 9 matches total. And first team to 5 is victorious. We are looking at next Wednesday. That would be the 30th. Not 100% locked in. I think everyone but BK has confirmed, and I think BK is going to be fine with that too. It'll be Wednesday evening. So sometime after work, likely in the 6 to 7 Pacific range is my guess, is when we'll fire it off. And we're going to have a bunch of folks streaming it. I know I'll be streaming it. I'm sure Ethan, Ben, and Alex are planning to. Marshall said he might, cast Rise from the Grave on his stream. And
I think I'll stream it. Yeah.
If we get all 5, I think BK will probably stream his perspective as well. And we'll battle for all the bragging rights. And we'll see what else. Maybe we'll put something else up too. Who knows? But definitely check back in for that. You can check out any announcement regarding that. We'll both be sure to be tweeting it out. You check our Twitters and tentatively pencil in the 30th. Though I'm actually pretty confident that it's going to end up happening on that day. So I'm really excited. We're going to do a nice little Zendikar draft and play it out, and we'll see who are the cowards and who are the warriors at the end of all of it.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That should be fun. Okay, now crack a pack. We'll do the first one that starts with a foil negate, and that is a foil negate. So there you go. Next is Adventure Awaits, and by the way, we're not taking negate. Adventure Awaits, 1 and a green sorcery. At common, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You can reveal a creature from among them and put it into your hand, and the rest go in a random order. If you decide not to do this, then you draw a card.
And this card, I think, is mediocre. It's generally not worth spending 2 mana to get a little bit of card selection here. And even though it's nice that you can never miss, I have played this card, but I really only play this card in a couple scenarios. One is that I have something like Relic Amulet. I actually had a blue-green Wizards Relic Amulet deck, and Adventure Away, which is perfectly fine there. Mm-hmm. It actually gives you 2 triggers. It triggers, and then it finds a wizard to get the second trigger. Mm. And then in a deck that really wants to assemble party, it's legit there. But I would hope not to take it here. And of course, I think you're probably less than 50% to play it in general.
Right. That's kind of how we graded it as well. These type of cards are just up against too much raw power these days to consistently make the cut. Next is Scorchwriter. That's a 3 and a red 4/3, but you can kick it for 1 and a red and give it haste. Card's been meh at best. I like this next one though. Tazeem Royal Mage, 1 and a blue, 2/1 Merfolk Wizard, which is important. It's got a kicker cost of 4, and if you kick it, you can return an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. Card's been good. I mean, you and I tend to like cards like this, cards that are playable in the early game if you just need to put something down to block a 3/2 or whatever. But if you get it anywhere near the late game, then you're really trying to go for a value play, and it does provide that.
Yeah, it's a good card. It is expensive, and of course, sometimes you won't have an instant or sorcery, which is just a disaster, because then you're not really getting much value out of it. But this is one of the better blue commons, and I would say most of the time you take it, you'll end up finding some targets for it. Yeah,
particularly good in the blue-red Wizards deck, but you can play it in other colors too. Spare Supplies is next. That's 2 mana artifact. It ETBs tapped. When it ETBs, you draw a card. You can pay 2, tap it, and sack it to draw another card. I have not been playing this card. I have seen some people play it, but it has been so slow that I've kind of shied away from it. I don't think it's terrible, but it kind of reminds me of Adventure Awaits. It's just the type of card that ends up in my sideboard more often than not.
Yeah, the best use that I've found for this is in one of those like green landfall ramp decks that doesn't like specifically the non-blue ones that needs more card advantage and has a high land count, because this is a good way to like use excess mana. Yeah, green red is where I played it most frequently, but I don't think it's an exciting card, and I think you're happy if you don't have to play it. This is still a kind of D level card.
Right. Next is Cliffhaven Sellsword. This is the 1 and a white 3/1 warrior. Have not been impressed by this one, but I'm assuming the red-white warriors deck will just battle with this.
It's totally fine. If you ever wanted to play this, you're not going to really feel bad about it. I've played it in decks that aren't red-white warriors as well, because sometimes when you're playing like a black-white clerics deck, but you have party payoffs, you need like a warrior or two to try to kind of fill out your roster. So
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. It's again, none of these cards are cards I'm looking to take early, though.
Right. Next is Synchronized Spellcraft. That's the 4 and a red instant. It does 4 damage to a creature and X damage to that creature's controller, where X is the number of creatures in your party. It's a good card.
Again, totally fine. Yeah. Kill something. Usually pings your opponent for like 1 or 2 damage.
Yep.
This is probably the best card so far, though. Tazeem Mage and Synchronized Spellcraft, I think, are pretty close.
Yeah, I right now I think I would be on Synchronized Spellcraft, but Royal Mage is right there.
I also don't love first picking Royal Mage, because you just might end up in a color combination. Like blue-green can be good with Royal Mage, but also you can easily have a blue-green deck with like 5 spells where Royal Mage is not going to shine. Yeah,
Bubble Snare is like your premium removal spell, and it doesn't interact with it.
Exactly.
Next is Highborn Vampire. That's 3 and a black for a 4/3 Vampire Warrior. I have yet to play this card.
Not happy about this one.
Yeah.
If I want to fill out my party, I want to do it with cheaper creatures. I don't like that this is going to use your whole turn and still just die to a lot of removal spells.
Right. Including probably the best common removal spell. Well, maybe the second best, whatever, but whatever it's called, Royal Eruption, kills this for 2 mana. It's like,
I do think that's the best common.
It's that or the black.
Deadly Alliance is certainly the second, but the fact that Royal Eruption can just go to the face for 5 damage is so huge.
Fantastic card. Next is Vanquish the Weak. That's the 2 and a black instant destroy target creature with power 3 or less. It's always interesting to kind of solidify in your brain as you work your way through, like, is it converted mana cost? Is it power? There's the other black removal spell that cares about converted mana cost. This one cares about power, and that's really important. I don't think I've ever main phased an instant as much as I have Vanquish the Weak in the sets that it's been in. It's, card you want to
when you have destroy target creature mana cost 2 or less, you can just wait, because the only way they can stop that is like a protection spell. When you have Vanquish the Weak, you get blown the hell out if they've got like a pump spell of some kind, and you just take 1 million damage. Yeah.
So I'm basically, if they tap out for their 3 powered anything and it's my turn, I'm just like, kill it. I just play that extremely safe, because it's such a terrible swing if it misses. Good card though. Any deck that I'm drafting black, I'd like to have at least one Vanquish the Weak. I don't want to go crazy. The third one really falls off. Probably run the second.
I think it's certainly a fine card. I have found it to be a little unimpressive in this format, because there's a lot of good 2-drops in the format. And when you're vanquishing 2-drops, you're not really getting a whole lot of value out of that.
Yeah. There's some spots to hit, but I agree. Also, some of the cards that you could hit actually end up getting out of range because of landfall, if you don't hit it in the right window.
Yeah, I'm certainly on Vanquish so far in this pack, but I'm actually unhappy taking this first, whereas in Ixalan, I thought the card was excellent.
Agree. Blood Price is next. That's 3 and a black sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 2 of them in your hand, and you lose 2 life. I have tried this card multiple times now, and the knocks on it are that it's slow. It's kind of tough to find the window to cast a spell like this. And of course, if you're behind, it makes you further behind. And when I've played it, those have all played out that way. The card just felt a little too slow, if it was an instant and it gave me an option to use my Vanquish the Weak rather than it or something, it felt like that could bump it over the edge. But every time I play it, I'm just like, God, this is close to being okay. And I have played in like the Clerics deck and stuff where the life's not as big of an issue, but still 4 mana sorcery is pretty rough. Late game, yeah, it's fine. I'm getting 2 spells basically every time, and I like that. But the times when you need it to be a little more towards the divination end of things, it's just not. It's really just not.
Yeah, the biggest issue I've had with Blood Price, because all those things you said are true, is that Blood Beckoning is the same card, but much better at what it does. Blood Beckoning is 1 mana to get back 1 creature, or 4 mana to get back 2.
Yeah.
and it draws you 2 spells for 4 mana or 1 spell for 1 mana, which is nice flexibility, while also, not costing you life and giving you a little bit of selection, though I guess Blood Price also gives you selection. I have just found that I don't need Blood Price. It's not a card I've gone to. So I'm pretty unhappy with that card.
I was hoping it would be like, what is it? Bargain?
Dark Bargain was good in Dominaria. It was actually like a premium card.
Yeah, exactly. And this just is not that set, and this is not that card.
Got more to the 2 biggest things are the fact that it's not an instant. So like you said, you can't leave up instant speed removal plus this. And then that Blood Beckoning just does the same thing, but in a much better way. I guess Dominaria had Soul Salvage too. But maybe this format has seemed to care about the board enough that Blood Price, I just haven't had that many good opportunities to cast it.
Yeah. Next, our first uncommon is Clave Plunder. That's the 4 and a blue sorcery. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of creatures in your party. Put 3 of those cards in your hand and the rest on the bottom in a random order. So your baseline is draw 3 for 5 sorcery speed. I actually have been able to make this work strangely, even though it looks a lot like Blood Price. But I found that the extra card really matters, because what I've done is, instead of ever thinking of this card as a turn 5 play or whatever, I just completely changed my game plan around and just like willfully trade off creatures or trade resources, and then try to finish up with a Clave Plunder after the dust is settled. And I've been able to do that actually pretty well. I don't know if it's just the extra card or the fact that it's in blue, which lends to different archetypes that are more amenable to it. Maybe a ramp deck or a wizard's deck that can make it cheaper or something. But I've actually been able to make Clave Plunder work, and I've been pretty happy with it.
Yeah, I think the extra card is a big part of it. I think the fact that you get to look at an additional card or 2 also just because of your party members is good. Not costing 2 life is good. I at this point in the pack, I would be interested in taking Clave Plunder.
Yeah, same.
Just because I think it is better than Vanquish the Weak.
It's the most powerful option. Next is Merfolk Windrobber. This is the blue 1/1 flying Merfolk rogue. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they mill a card, and you can sacrifice it to draw a card if they have 8 or more cards in their graveyard, the opponent.
This is a very good card in the dedicated rogues deck. They're always interested in this because it milling turns on a lot of their payoffs. It gets to cash itself out, and it's a 1-mana rogue with flying, so it just helps with a lot of the other things that care about rogues and little creatures. That said, I would not want to first pick it because you just might not end up in rogues, and this card's like unplayable outside of a rogues deck. Basically, like you could fill it out in a blue-white party deck or red-blue wizards if you really need it for some reason. I just can't really imagine wanting to play it outside of blue-black or sometimes blue-white.
Yeah, it barely makes blue-black. It's okay. The one thing that it also does is like comes down, hits them a few times, gets a little bit of mill going, and then it transitions into a creature that you don't need anymore, so you can tap it to make your rogues unblockable or death touch or whatever if you get the uncommons. Yeah, but otherwise it's just low power, low impact enough to not really make the cut in any of the other decks. Next is Saloondi Vision. This is the 2 and a blue instant at uncommon, of course. Look at the top 6 cards of your library. You can put a instant or reveal and put an instant or sorcery into your hand. The rest go on the bottom in a random order. And then it's also a land that enters the battlefield tapped and taps for blue. Card's been good. It's a good card. This is just shy of that dividing line that I talked about on the set review, where I'm viewing these double-faced cards as like, is this a card that I would put in my deck anyway and just play? Versus, is this a card that I would that is really, I'm viewing it as a land like most of the time, but then, if I draw it late and I've already got enough lands, I can play it as a spell. And this one's really coming up on that line, but it is not quite across it. I would not play Saloondi Vision in a normal deck on its own. So I am viewing this more in the land category, which means it's on the lower end of power level. And I think that these ones you can consider taking regular spells over them if they're much more powerful.
You can. But I would take Saloondi Vision here. I believe it's a better first pick than Clave Plunder so I guess if you want to put the dividing line as something like the best commons like Royal Eruption or Deadly Alliance, I would take those over Saloondi Vision at this point. But I would take Saloondi Vision here because what we're talking about isn't quite that good. I guess one of the actively good double-faced cards like Colony Ambush or Kazul's Fury, those I would take over the best commons because they're close enough to a real card and they can be played as a land. Saloondi Vision is kind of like is more akin to a cycling land, which I value cycling lands very highly, and I believe this ability is better than just straight up cycle draw card, because most decks you're going to have enough targets that this will give you a little bit of extra dig for it. Mm-hmm. But it is a good point that you would not put 2 in a blue, look at the top 6, put a spell into your hand.
Yeah, that's kind of the tough part to figure out there. But I'm definitely with you that Saloondi Vision is right up there with the level of
I wonder how many of our of our cracker packs are going to end up going down this road. Well, we're going to see a lot.
If my drafts are any indication, a lot of them.
Well, part of it too, and we're going to get into the whole double face topic in just a sec anyway, but part of it is that it's also really safe taking these lands first because the risk is so much lower because you can play them off color in many situations. Then it's really not bad to end up in a spot where you take one of these and then later have the opportunity to put it in a deck. Whereas if you took a blue card, you might not end up being blue.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is weird. I always default back to these because I'm like, how can I pass them? Here's our rare. It's Nahiri's Lithoforming, or Lithoforming. I still haven't figured that out. It's red X for sorcery. Sacrifice X lands. For each land sacrificed this way, draw a card. You may play X additional lands this turn. Lands you control into the battlefield tap this turn. We did not like this card in the set review, and I continue to not like it. Would not take it here.
I would not take this card here.
Yeah. So Saloondi Vision narrowly over Clave Plunder with Vanquish the Weak somewhere in there as well for this one. Do you want to do another cracker pack, Luis, or do you want to get into the discussion?
Let's do one more cracker pack. I think these are illuminating in the beginning of the format.
Okay, we'll do another one here. So first up is Turn Timber Ascetic. This is 4 and a green for a 5/4, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 life, and it's also a cleric.
I have found this card to be totally fine.
Fine 5-drop, yeah. The 3 life really matters, and it's nice and big.
Yeah, be unhappy to take it super early, but I don't feel bad when I play one of my green decks, is a good way to say it.
Yeah, same. Next is Utility Knife. That's 1 mana artifact equipment. As with all the equipment in the set, it auto-equips the first time. The creature just gets +1/+1, and the equip cost is 3. I have not played or I think one person's played this against me and it was not impressive.
Oh yeah, it's not a good card.
Yeah. Next is Territorial Scythe Cat. That's the 2 and a green 2/1 trample landfall cat, and the landfall gives it a +1/+1 counter. I like this card actually. These green and white landfall creatures just on their own have been good. Like it turns out that, we remember all the way back from original Zendikar like 10 years ago that landfall that affects combat is good, and getting these counters and having trample actually matters. This is a totally fine 3-drop for any green deck.
Yeah, I think that the tiger is quite strong, and I've had it grow big enough that it's just a huge threat where your opponent is not even able to chump it. And that balances up the fact that sometimes it gets pinged to death or killed by a small damage spell early. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it can just be such an enormous threat, and 1 land away, it's a 3/2 trample, which trades for another 2 or 3 drop. That's okay. And then 2 lands, all of a sudden it's trading up. So
right. And one of the hidden modes on these cards too is that even if they do get outclassed, that isn't a permanent situation, right? Like if let's say you have a 3/2 Scythe Cat and your opponent's like, here's my 5/5 go. Normally you're just like, well, I'm going to have to double block at some point or find a removal spell. Well, if things go unchanged, that Scythe Cat will eventually be able to at least trade for that thing. And maybe even eat it, depending on what you've got.
It's actually kind of funny because most landfall creatures, like Akumal Hound, for example, or like the Brushfire Elemental, play such that you play a land, you get in for damage, and then later in the game they have trouble getting through.
This reverses that.
The Scythe Cat's the reverse, where you don't attack with it because you don't want to trade it for their 3/3 because you just want to wait, and then it starts attacking.
I never thought of it like that, but it is true. It just turns the tables. Next is another Cliffhaven Sellsword. That's the 3/1 for 1 and a white that we talked about last crack pack. Scale the Heights is next. It's 2 and a green sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. You gain 2 life. You may play an additional land this turn. Draw a card. I love these cards that try to meld together multiple things that archetypes are trying to do. But this Scale the Heights just seems like every time somebody plays it, I'm like, okay. Basically, you got a +1/+1 counter and drew a card, and I'm not really that worried about it. It kind of was a lot of mana to spend for not a huge impact on the board. The upside, of course, is very high. You're in the landfall deck. You put a +1/+1 counter on your creature that just got blocked. Your other creature gets a landfall trigger. whatever, or actually not just Scott block, but that's going to attack. I don't know. To me, Scale the Heights has not lived up. And when people play it, I'm like, oh no, what are they doing? Oh, that's it? No, I don't care anymore.
I think it's one of those cards that if you have a deck that it has good payoffs and needs more enablers, it's totally fine to play. If you have a deck that just is short playable somehow, which is not really easy to do in this format,
no, it's not.
then it's fine too. But yeah, for the most part, I haven't been impressed with it and have been largely happy when my opponent plays it. It just takes a whole turn for a bunch of effects that don't add up to 3 mana unless you really care about specific ones, which sometimes you do.
Right. But here's the interesting thing, right? It's skirting all these lines. It's like you gain 2 life, but you know what doesn't care about that? Your landfall deck. But you get to play an additional land. Well, you know what doesn't care about that? Your other deck that, it doesn't, that you don't even have another land in your hand or whatever. You get a +1/+1 counter. Well, that's okay. But the only deck that really wants that is black green. The other ones are just getting a +1/+1 counter. It's like none of these, it's so hard to even get 2 of these to hit at the same time that it can be, that I think it just makes Scale the Heights not a thing. Chilling Trap is next. It's blue, instant. A target creature gets -4/-0 until end of turn. If you control a wizard, draw a card. As we talked about in the set review, outside of the wizard's deck, not where you want to be. But I have been playing these in my wizard's deck, which is really cool because you can get them anytime you want. Nobody wants this card. And it's awesome. It really is. Like, if you're playing blue-red wizards, you almost always have a wizard on the battlefield. It is not difficult. Almost all of the cards have that built in. Like, they're just wizards anyway, and then you'll have a few exceptions, but getting Chilling Trap turned on is not hard at all, and it's powerful. It really is. Like, you can win combat really easy with this and draw a card, and I think that's great. Like, I actually think Chilling Trap's really good in Wizards, and then everywhere else I just don't care about it.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great card if you can enable it, but it's not a particularly good card outside of that one specific deck.
Yeah, the drawing a card is nice.
So I will say that there is a kind of like second tier wizard deck in the sense that blue-green can actually assemble a good amount of wizards because blue has, of course, a ton. And then green has Jiraga Visionary and also the Arbor Mage, the 3 mana 2/3 that you has Kicker, Allure, everything.
Yeah.
Those two wizards have combined where if I'm getting 3 green wizards plus like 6 or 7 blue wizards, I actually have a wizards deck.
Interesting. I have not even tried or seen that, but I could see it. Next is Akumal Hound. That's the red 0/1 elemental dog. Landfall gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Yeah, it looks like a beater and stuff, and if it does come down on turn 1, it can do some work, but I'll tell you, when people play this against me, I'm not actually that worried. Like, I have found that maybe red, white, or whatever, I'll play as many of these as I can get, but generally speaking, even like in the red-green deck and stuff, if you don't have the Hellhound on turn 1, it really underperforms. Like, even getting it down turn 2, it already can be traded off with or blocked safely by a 2/3 or something by the time it can attack. So I'm down on it, generally speaking. Only in the really most aggressive decks do I want Akumal Hound.
I like it in red-white or red-green, but think it's the kind of card you actually have to be sure you want. There are red-green decks that should absolutely not play Hellhound.
Right, which is weird because you'd think you would just... this looks like a really good card, but I just think it's a lot more narrow.
Well, it never can block well, and it runs out of steam on the aggro side fairly quickly, while also running into the problem of if you miss a land drops, it does literally nothing.
Right.
That said, if you open brutal, with this into a 2 and a 3 and are hitting your land drops, this card is a big part of that why those draws are so good. So I think you should play it if you're very aggressive and not play it otherwise.
Next is Dreadworm. It's 4 and a black for a 5/4 with landfall. It gets indestructible until end of turn. Haven't been impressed by the Dreadworm. When it's on the battlefield, it is a 5-mana spell worthy of 5 mana. But when it comes to the draft or when I'm building my deck, it's almost always the first thing to go, and I don't pick it highly. I can't stress this enough, but if a creature doesn't have a party type, it really needs to pull its weight. And Dreadworm is just like average quality, and that just isn't good enough because it's a worm horror. It's not it doesn't fill out, it's not a cleric or anything like that. So to me, Dreadworm is like deep into the D territory and just will only make the deck when you really just need a 5-ball.
Yeah, it's also suffers a little from the fact that the spell lands give you a lot of extra flood protection, which means I just put a lower priority on expensive cards because I know late in the game I'll usually have something to do.
Right.
So It's a fine card, but it doesn't make the cut most of the time for all the reasons we mentioned.
What is that? Is it called word association? Can you see our next two cards, Luis?
Oh no, I try to do the crack a pack such that I was actually cracking the pack just for the authentic experience for the viewers.
I wish I had some packs
and really just giving them the LR quality that they deserve.
All right,
but you can do whatever you want, Marshall.
I think it's called word association. It's Into the Royal Eruption.
Oh, nice. Those are our next two cards, Into the Royal and Royal. Well,
yeah.
So, I mean, clearly Royal Eruption, I think, is going to be the pick until we get to our uncommons. I do believe it's just the best common. It's just cheap, flexible, works with your kicker stuff, works with your spells matter stuff, just all the things you want. Into the Royal is also very good. I actually am not sure where Into the Royal and Bubble Snare relate to each other. Like, there is a chance that Bubble Snare is just the best blue common, but Into the Royal, if it's behind, isn't far behind, and some decks would rather have Into the Royal, and I can't really tell as much which is which. I think the aggro decks would just prefer Into the Royal because bouncing is almost as good as killing for those decks, like a blue-red Wizards deck.
And if you can cantrip it, yeah.
Yeah, but the decks that tend to be a little on the more controlling or defensive side that have more opportunities to cast 1-mana bubble snares, like blue-green kicker, for example, that deck can often get behind until it starts rolling out its kicked spells, that they want Bubble Snare more. So I think Into the Royal and Bubble Snare they're effectively tied for me. It just depends on what your deck is trying to do.
Yeah.
And then Royal Eruption is just better than both.
Agreed. Yeah. I've been, I mean, not that I don't know that these come up in the same pack, but I've been prioritizing Bubble Snare in my mind slightly ahead of Into the Royal. But like you said, there's too many times where Into the Royal would be taken over it, because it's a spell, or we use a shorthand spell, but it's an instant or sorcery, which matters for the Wizards deck a lot, way more than Bubble Snare does. So Into the Royal in blue-red is much better on average. But boy, when your opponent gets one hit in with their thing and you're just like, Bubble Snare it for literally 1 blue mana and then play a 3-drop or whatever, it feels really good. I mean, double spelling in limited's a real thing. That is an indicator of wins for sure. If you can double spell before your opponent does, it gives you a leg up. And this is not opt into a 3-drop, right? We're talking about like removal spell into something that affects the board. Like it can be really, really strong. But yeah, the synergy stuff for Into the Royal, for Wizards particularly, I think makes it a little bit stronger. Royal Eruption, though, I wonder how many uncommons are better than it, because I have found myself sort of toying around with like, well, should I take this kind of cute uncommon, the one that can like give a thing lifelink and I get some cats or whatever, or should I just be an adult and take Royal Eruption? And I often just default back to Royal Eruption because it's just never, ever, ever bad. Just ever.
It does basically everything you want.
Yeah. Next is our first uncommon, which is Scion of the Swarm. All right, so let's put these to the test right away. 3 black flying vampire cleric. It's a 3/3, and whenever you gain life, you put a counter on it.
I have found this card to be very effective in the black-white clerics deck.
Yeah.
It's mediocre outside of that.
Yes.
Like you're not gonna you should treat this effectively as a black-white card. You can play it outside of black-white. There's gonna be some like black-red decks that just incidentally have 3 or 4 life gain sources and it's acceptable. But this is close enough to a black-white card that I'm a little hesitant to first pick it. I also don't like first picking expensive payoffs as much as I do either cheap ones or enablers, just because these are the ones that can most often go wrong. So I would take this behind both Royal Eruption and Into the Royal. Pick one, pack one.
Kargan War Leaders next. This is the 1 red-white 3/3 human warrior that gives other warriors you control +1/+1. So this is very powerful, but also suffers from the same thing that you cited with the Scion of the Swarm, except for it's literally a gold card.
Yes. I mean, there are red-white warrior decks that want this more than Royal Eruption, but some of them would rather just have Royal Eruption anyway. And of course, it's a gold card. So I don't think that's particularly close. I would still take both Royal Commons over this.
Next is Spikefield Hazard. This is red instant, and it does 1 damage to any target. If a permanent dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead, and you can play it as a land that enters the battlefield, taps for red mana.
Man, is it crazy? But I really want to take this over Royal Eruption, but I'm not sure.
Oh, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
not me.
I think you should take Royal Eruption.
Yeah, so this one is
I think it's close though.
Very firmly in that other camp, right? Remember the dividing line. This Spikefield Hazard is way over towards the I wouldn't put this in my deck normally category. So I'm viewing this as a land that has minor upside at some point in the game.
Well, I think that heuristic doesn't quite work here in the sense that, yes, Spikefield Hazard is not a card you'd put in your deck, but it's a very good combination with a land, because narrow cards that are good in specific situations, I think, are exactly what you want on these lands.
True.
Whereas something like Saloondi Vision is just an underpowered card. So you're not really interested in putting Saloondi Vision in your deck. Spikefield Hazard, getting to buy out of it with a land, I think is a really big upside for the card. So I would take Royal Eruption over it. I think it's actually somewhat close. But in general, I think that Spikefield Hazard is a very good card.
I think it's pretty good. Yeah. This we'll talk about this in just a minute because we need to get into the weeds here for sure.
Yeah. I think part of it too is there's a lot of 1 toughness creatures in this format.
That is true. There actually are.
It's better than it would be in just your average limited format.
It definitely is. I do like it for that. All right. Well, our rare, we complained about it in the set review and we got one, Luis. It's Xerath the Trickster. 3 blue.
There we go.
Yeah, we got it. It's the 3 blue black 4/4 flash legendary Merfolk rogue. And you can pay 2 black blue to return an unblocked attacking rogue you control to its owner's hand and put Xerath in its place tapped and attacking. And whenever Xerath deals combat damage to a player, you may put target permanent card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control.
Yeah. I mean, clearly slamming Xerath here. I think this is just one of the best cards in the set.
Yep. And we're talking about upside here, folks, right? Like, because this is also a gold card, and there's a much better chance that we will not play Xerath than we would play, say, Royal Eruption, for example. But as Luis talked about in the set review, and we talk about on the show sometimes, these things aren't linear. Like if we get the Xerath into our deck, it's a 10 out of 10. And that, even though Royal Eruption's like an 8 or maybe even a 9, I mean, the card's amazing. Xerath is basically irreplaceable if you actually get to play it. So it's worth going for that upside.
Yeah.
Ooh, we got one, Luis. We got a Xerath that we actually get to not actually play in the deck or see how good it is, because I still haven't actually opened one. Let's get into the show. So we're into the meat of the topic. So let's start off with the double face land. So, boy, these are the hardest things that we've had to evaluate in a long time. You and I both, our instincts right away were these are amazing, and they have really played out well. The question, though, that I'm seeing on Twitter and people talking about this a lot is how to conceptualize how many of these to play and whether they replace a land or not. So one shortcut that I've been using in my head, and this is why I've brought up this, like, am I viewing this more as a land or am I viewing this more as a spell? Right. And therefore I have to make a decision on each of these cards on would I put this in my deck as a spell if it weren't a land, or is it close to that end of the spectrum? Or is it more like here's a land and then sometimes it does a little something extra. So that's kind of nice. Whether it's towards that end of the spectrum. And that's to me kind of the interesting part about it, because if I have 17 lands in my deck and then I look at my list and let's say I have 4 of these double face cards, if they fall on that lower end of the spectrum, like minimal impact cards, but hey, you're getting free rolled for having a land into the battlefield tapped, and that's an easy price to pay, I would sub those in for lands just 1 for 1. Basically, I'm just saying I'm willing to play a couple of tap lands in the place of basic lands because they have this extra upside. But any of the ones that I have that I would actually be okay with as spells, I've been putting in as extra lands. Like basically I'm just putting them in as extra, and then I'll play them as a land if I need to in my opening hand, but it's not actually what I want to be doing. Like some of those are really good cards that I just want to cast. Like I want the backup plan to be a land, not a spell, where sometimes I want the backup plan to be the spell, not the land. And that's how I've been deciding which one is which. Then I look at it and I've been usually getting around 19. Usually I end up having 19 cards that could be lands in my deck, sometimes 20, depending on how many of those things I picked up. How are you viewing this? How are you breaking this stuff down?
I think that your heuristic is going to be ultimately the most useful one for people, because that's also how I tend to view them. basically, when you look at a card like the extreme is Shatter Skull Smashing, you're basically never playing that as a land unless you just have to. Right. You know, or Hogra Mauling or whatever, like the 4-mana kill a creature. And then on the flip side, you have like a Vastwood Strength or whatever, the 1-mana put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. And some of these cards are kind of easy to categorize, where it's like, well, yeah, the Skyclave Cleric and, you know, Vastwood whatever and Saloondi Vision, these are lands that sometimes I get to play as spells, and then the high end ones like, you know, Emeria's Call and Hagra Mauling and Shatter Skull Smashing, these are spells that I can play as lands, and then you can kind of formulate where you want your lands from there, right? Mm-hmm. So that will lead you mostly to having around, depending on how many of these you take, I'd say 19 is probably the most common land count that I'll end up playing in this format, but I've definitely played 20 or 21 lands before. Mm-hmm. I have played 17, but honestly, I think I've only played 17 like once or twice, and 18 or 19 is going to be a lot more often. So I guess a good way to look at it is once you've figured out which of these cards you have as spells, which is lands, that'll give you a good idea of where you want to end up in terms of a land count. But there's a couple other factors too. Okay. One is I very much try to pick up cards like Pyroclastic Hellion or Kazandu Stomper or Tazeem Raptor. These are the 3 commons that pick up lands, because what those cards do, not only are they, you know, they're a 5-mana 4/5 deal 2 or a 6-mana 6/5 trample, so they actually affect the board. These aren't the best rates, but they do definitely affect the board. They also end up in a spot where you can play your lands, your spell lands, even good ones early, and not worry about it.
Yep.
And I think that that's critical. Like, I think that being able to go like, I'm playing a white deck, I have 2 Tazeem Raptors. Well, I'm just going to play Emeria's Call on turn 1 and know that at some point late in the game, this is a 7-mana spell, I'll be able to pick up a Tazeem, or pick it up with a Tazeem Raptor and get access to it.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of our calculus, both with how many lands to play, but also just how to play with the lands.
Yeah, and critically, those 3 cards you mentioned, the Raptor, the Hellion, and the Stomper, they don't charge you for this. Like, you're not having, like, you're getting a 2/2 flyer or 4/5 that does some damage, or a 6/5 trample. You're not like, it's not like, well, I have to put this crappy creature in my deck so that I have the ability to pick up these things. They're just fine creatures on their own. They're not amazing, but they're all totally fine. And so you get to do that effectively for free. That situation that Luis described. Very powerful part of how the format works. The other ways that I found is, if I am going to be like, here's the thing. Let's say I look at my opening hand and I have 1 or maybe even 2 of my spell lands, and I need to play them. That happens sometimes. Or you have one in your opener, and then the first card you draw is one, and you're like, well, I just need to play this tap land and kind of get them out of the way. Well, another way you can mitigate, because now all of a sudden, you know, you've got these 2 cards down plus another 17 basic lands somewhere in your deck, and you're likely to flood out, is kicker, right? Make sure that you include some kicker cards or some card draw. You need to have some way to spend extra mana in the late game, and this format provides it. They clearly knew about this in R&D and were like, look, this is a good spot for kicker because people are playing landfall, or people are putting extra lands in their deck because of these new cards. That's an important piece of the puzzle. You are more likely to flood if you end up having to play those early tap spell lands. So make sure that your decks are packing a little bit more heat for the late game, and you won't be punished for it. In fact, you'll kind of be rewarded for it in a weird way. Anything that's a mana sink can be good. And we've seen this start to pop up with cards that demand more mana as well, as they've kind of, you know, like, they're doing okay. You know, you, me, and Paul were talking about the engine, what's it called? Engine?
Lithoform engine.
Yeah, Lithoform engine. And, you know, look, that card's really slow, and in his board stall, it's great, and et cetera. But, you know, it does kind of demand a lot of you to pay a bunch of extra mana. But I had a chance to try it out last night, and I was like, this is okay. Like, I'm not missing many land drops. And once I activated a couple of times on almost anything, I feel like I'm getting ahead. So, you know, even little weird cards like that can help fill that void if you need them.
This is the format with the least amount of mana screw and mana flood I think that I've ever played.
Oh yeah.
Everyone just gets to play 20 lands so they don't get mana screwed, but also just gets to play, 22 spells or 23 spells, 24 spells and not get flooded either, with kicker also in the format.
Yeah.
So it's really going a long way. Another thing I want to bring up with double face lands is splashes, because I mentioned this on Twitter and a couple people were asking like what exactly I meant. So here's an example. You're playing blue-black, and you end up selecting, because you took them early or because you're actually planning on splashing, 3 red double-face lands. You have Spikefield Hazard, Kazul's Fury, and Akum Warrior. So like the 6-mana 4/5, the Fling, and then the Deal 1. You can play those 3 as a kind of package where how it works is the first one you draw, you tend to play as just a tapped land, and then it can cast the other 2. And the reason that that's so strong, as opposed to like splashing just some random red cards in your blue-black deck, which we generally do not approve of, is the risk of splashing a red card in your blue-black deck is you'll draw the card and not draw a land. When you draw the first one of these, you can play it as a tapped colorless land. And that's just totally fine. It helps you cast your blue and black spells still. You're not ending up in a situation where you just have uncastable cards in your hand. And then the future ones you can cast as spells or play as lands if you still need lands. And this even could lead to splashing something like a Royal Eruption alongside it. They don't all have to be just the double-faced lands, but in particular, like I splashed 2 Sejiri Shelters and a Skyclave Cleric. Not even the most powerful ones in general, right? In a blue-green deck, I played 1 Plains because I had 3 different ways to search out a basic. And I also had a Kazandu Stomper in this deck. And how it played out is I would just play one of those white cards as a land first, and either draw a second one and cast it, or eventually draw or search up my Plains, play Kazandu Stomper, pick them up. And look, I'm not saying Kazandu Cleric is the most impactful card in the world, but when you have it effectively for free, it's still a card. It still gains you 2 life. It still blocks something. And then Sejiri Shelter or Kabira Takedown are both very real cards.
Right. So, especially when they're free, like you said, when they just don't cost you much.
So the opportunity cost is just so low. And what I would recommend in general is you still want to play these you want to end up with, like, if you're doing this, you want to end up with like probably 20 lands in your deck, because you don't want to count, you're not reliably going to be able to necessarily cast these spells in a timely manner. So they're kind of like bonus lands. And what it does, it works even better if you have blue and black double face lands as well in your blue black deck, because by playing the red ones as lands, you get to play the blue and black ones as spells more often.
There you go. That's really interesting. Yeah, these have been some of the most fascinating cards they've printed in a long time for us limited players. First recognizing their power, but now trying to figure out the different ways that they actually affect how the games play out. But boy, they are powerful.
They're fantastically powerful. I expect to get to do less of the splash once people start taking these at a higher level or taking them earlier, because right now I feel like I get around 6 or 7 in a lot of my drafts. And I think once there's more of an equilibrium, you should expect to get like 2 to 4.
2 to 4.
More often.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about the party mechanic. Paul from our chat wanted to know what we thought about it, if we're finding it easier to assemble than we first thought. Paul says, I've had plenty of full parties several times now. I have not. I have not found it easier. I found it to be about what we thought, where 1, you effectively always have even like 1 extra besides whatever you're casting. 2, so basically your party is 2 very often, 3 a pretty decent chunk of the time. Like that happens often, I would say. And then 4 is almost never in my experience. And I'm not playing a lot of Stonework.
How would you like percentage wise, how would you split that up?
I would say, let's assume that 1 is free, because like so many of these cards are 1 themselves.
If you have a creature in play, it's going to be hard for it not to be one of the classes.
Right. So I would say, 90+% or whatever for that. 2, I would say 75% of the time I have 2. And then 3, I would say like 35 or 40% of the time. And then all 4, I would say like 3 or 4%, like very low. Like I've had it happen, I think twice, but it lasted a turn, and then they killed off my they broke up my party, as it were. Something like that.
Yeah, I think that, 1 and 2 are pretty easy. 3, I think, is a lot more difficult, and 4 is even more difficult than that.
Right.
But there's a couple things you can do to maximize it, while also you have to realize not every party deck cares about getting a full party. Some specifically do. There's a number of cards that reward you, rares mostly, for having an actual full party. But there are a lot of cards that you basically look at it as like a threshold 2, where if you have 2 party members, then the card is fantastic. So in general, you should know kind of what number you need to hit. If you reliably need to hit 2, then you kind of don't have to bias your draft all that differently.
Right.
You can just draft the cards that are good that you want for your deck, and you'll naturally have 1 or 2 most of the time. And maybe sometimes at the end, you're like, wow, I'm blue-black rogues, but I would actually like to have 2 party members, and I might as well pick up a wizard here or a cleric or something just to diversify a little bit. And when you're doing that, it's even better. Like if you have 10 rogues in your deck, you want to alternate picking wizard, cleric, warrior, just so you have as many of each individual one. Like you don't want 3 wizards. You want 1 wizard, 1 cleric, 1 warrior, so that you have more combinations to get to 2.
That's right. Quick search, by the way, there's 5 cards that include the text full party. They're all rare. So yeah. But that's this is kind of the cool thing too, is that like, it isn't really about getting a full party anyway, because most of the mechanics scale with the size of your party. It's not an on or off switch, right? It's, well, your spell's 1 cheaper or another cheaper. So, the difference between 2 and 3 can be big, but I like that they didn't emphasize this Tron thing where it's like, you have to get a full party or you're not really doing what it's supposed to do. It's just, it scales. A lot of times 2 is plenty good, right? Like, it's good on the not Stinger, whatever it's called. The
Malakir cleric.
The Blight Breath Catableepus that we.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Like Drana's Ambusher or whatever
it's called. Silencer, maybe something. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
That sounds right.
Yeah. But those type of cards, right? Like 2's pretty good there. 3's good. 2's pretty good, right? When your removal spell goes from costing 5 mana down to 3 and it kills anything, that's good. Like you're good to go, right? It's not about it only costing 1 mana and that's where it's broken. It's like once you get it to 3, it's really strong. 2 is, a step better. And I think that that's true for most of these that get counters or any of these things, is that 2 is really fine. Like most of these cards seem to be designed so that if you're getting 2 party member things, the cards are just good cards, like cards that you'd be quite happy to play in your deck. Even if they're a common, they play a little bit more like an uncommon. And then if you get it to 3, they're even better. But
I don't think there's almost any party card where 2 isn't good enough.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah. So
like, there are ones that scale up better, but almost all of them, if they cost 2 less, if they deal 4 damage when you're looking at like the tactics, etc., once you're at 2, you're pretty much doing it.
Yeah.
And that has made party play out really well. I think that it's a cool mechanic. It's very evocative for D&D fans. It actually makes a ton of sense, and that I think goes a long way because flavor actually does help sell, because it's easy to remember who the 4 party members are if you have any knowledge of D&D. It's not like it's impossible otherwise, but if you have that, it's actually kind of like a cheat sheet, and that's really good. That's building on like pre-existing, brain space. The other thing is there's a really important card, the Stonework Pack Beast, that I think is going too late right now, at least in the drafts I've seen, because it's a 2-mana 2/1. It counts as all 4 party types, which doesn't mean it's a full party in and of itself, but it fills out any type you're missing. And it also even filters mana, which isn't the best ability in the world, but sometimes comes up. Mm-hmm. Pack Beast is kind of like the changeling of the set. In fact, it's even like a changeling, and it has multiple types, where when you're playing blue-red wizards, Pack Beast can help get your party to 2 or 3 pretty easily, while also counting as a wizard for all your spells that care about wizards. When you're playing black-white clerics, it gets you that warrior or rogue or wizard slot, which can help because you're still going to be playing Deadly Alliance in these decks. You're still going to be playing these cards that care about it. You still have your like Veteran Adventurer, which is cheaper for the number of party members you have, while also counting as any party type. And I see Stonework Pack Beast as being a pretty critical card in any deck that really wants to ramp up past 2. Malakir Blood Priest is a great reason to do that. That's the 2-mana 2/1 that drains.
Yep.
And there are other cards like that as well that yes, at 2 they're all good, but if you can get to 3 or 4 reliably for like Shepherd of Heroes or any of the cards that count, Kabira Outrider gives +1/+1 for each member of your party. These are the kind of things that you're going to see real payoffs by taking the Stonework Pack Beast earlier.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, and it's weird. I go back and forth because the party mechanic itself isn't particularly evocative for me because I haven't played D&D before. So I'm kind of like, I mean, you had to explain it to me. So to me, it's a little bit mechanical. Like it feels a little dry to me where I'm kind of like, I have to just constantly, like if you play on Arena, you can see when somebody's reading your cards. I have to do that too, where I'm just reading is this one a cleric or a rogue? Okay, that one's a cleric. Okay, is this one a warrior or a wizard? All right, that one's a warrior. And it's like, you have to really kind of grind, really be aware of all the things that are going on, with every creature type on every creature on the battlefield. It can be a little bit mechanical, but it's also felt balanced and good. So I've even seen some people tweeting that they really think that the party mechanic's like, a top mechanic, that kind of thing. And I haven't felt that way, but also like the way it's played has been really, really well balanced. You can tell that they put a good amount of time into getting it right.
Yeah, I think that this is the kind of mechanic that could have gone wrong pretty easily, and they've nailed it. So
yeah,
I don't know that I'm not going to say this is one of the best mechanics of all time, but it's definitely in like the top 20% easily.
Okay, there you go. Let's talk about some archetypes here. This isn't going to be the full archetype breakdowns. We'll do those a little bit later in the format after we've had a chance to get our hands on them. But this is a first look at some of the archetypes that Luis and I have been drafting successfully and feel like are front runners to be some of the best in the format. And the first one that you and I have talked about the most is Black-White Clerics.
So Black-White Clerics is kind of propped up by the fact that it's got a lot of really strong build around uncommons. It's one of those archetypes. It kind of like cycling, not nearly as powerful as cycling in Ikoria. We want to get ahead of that, but kind of like cycling in that it's got a lot of payoffs and they all basically hit. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, you end up with a really good deck. The standouts for me are Cleric of Life's Bond. That's the white-black 2/2. That gains you a life whenever a cleric enters the battlefield under your control, and the first time you gain life each turn, it gets a +1/+1 counter.
Cards of
it's
house.
A cleric also.
Yes.
The first time I drafted Black-White Clerics, I had 3 of them and 2 Relic Amulets.
You had 3? Oh my god!
I don't want to spoil the results because the draft hasn't gone up on Channel Fireball, but I kind of did by saying
you had 3 Cleric of Lifespan. Okay, yeah, that's a good start.
And the other one is Relic Amulet. That's Relic Vial. I keep calling it Amulet for some reason. Relic Vial, the 3 mana artifact that whenever you control a cleric, Relic Vial has when one of your creatures dies, drain your opponent for 1, and then has 2 tap sack a creature to draw a card. And Relic Vial is a really good grindy card where, first of all, it triggers no matter why your cleric dies. So you trade in combat, boom. Also, it triggers even when your non-clerics die as long as you have a cleric. Mm-hmm. And the way it works in this deck is you just trade off your creatures and drain them and then use Blood Beckonings to get them back. You're triggering all your life gain stuff like, the 3/3 flyer that gets a +1/+1 counter or the 3/2 that pings your opponent for 1 when you gain life.
Yep.
And you end up in a spot, where all your cards are draining them and gaining you life. You're getting to draw cards off sacking things to the vial. And you have all these cheap, effective creatures. Malakir Blood Priest is excellent here. It's going to be a 2-mana 2/1 that drains them for 2 a lot of the time, sometimes 3 if you've gone hard on the pack beasts. And then Blood Beckoning ties it all together because all your good cards are cheap creatures. So getting them back is really effective. This deck also has access to a ton of great removal. It's a very good deck.
Yeah, that part's really stood out to me as well, the removal aspect of it. Look, black often gets good removal. You get Deadly Alliance, which is one of the best removal cards in the set, which really helps you along. But also, what is that card called again?
Which one?
Feed the Swarm?
Yes, Feed the Swarm. The 2-mana kill a creature or enchantment, lose that life equal to its casting cost. Yeah, this deck, I've just had games where you're at 32 life, so drawing 2 Feed the Swarms is completely fine, whereas like blue-black control can't really afford that.
Right. So, this is really a great deck for Feed the Swarm, which really helps it along. And then some of the stuff that I've tried to avoid a little bit that I haven't found quite as good are, the +1/+1 counter stuff, the crocodile, even the snake, the Highborn Vampire. Like these are, I really want cards that care about or say gain life, like the Ghastly Gloom Hunter is a card I totally want in this deck. I'll play that a lot. That card's been impressive to me in general as well. Another card that's been better than I thought it would in this deck is Mind Drain. That's the 2 and a black sorcery. Target opponent discards 2 cards, but they also mill a card and lose a life, and you gain a life. And the life gain plus the 2 cards ends up adding up usually a lot of time to be worth it if you have the payoffs that Luis mentioned. And also I found Mind Drain to be just a little better than it would be in a normal set because people are hanging on to kicker cards to try to kick them. So sometimes they have a spell in their hand that they could cast. They choose not to. And then you end up getting to Mind Drain them. Also, it works interestingly against landfall because people are really incentivized to play out all their lands rather than hold a couple of them, thinking that you might have a Mind Drain, and that can leave the other cards in their hands exposed. So just a couple of card notes there. But that has been, it's felt to me like the most powerful archetype so far, but this next one has been really strong too, which is blue-green kicker. And that's the 3 decks I've played the most are black-white life gain, blue-green kicker, and blue-red wizards. And the blue-green kicker deck has been really good. One of the cards that we talked about on the set review that we thought could be quite strong, and it ends up being actually really very, very good in this deck, is the Risen Riptide. That card smashes. Like, I have absolutely had games before where I did all my damage with 2 Riptides. Like, I just played them, and then my opponent couldn't really kill me because they're 0/5s. So they're just like, maybe get in for a little damage here or there. And then I just went like, bubble your creature, attack you for 10. And they're like, oh, crap. There goes half my life total. And these things are just bigger than anything at their casting cost at 5/5s when they start attacking. And you can, if they're left unchecked and you have enough kicker cards, you can just win the game. And there are so many kicker cards that are well worth playing that it doesn't feel like you really run out as long as you're prioritizing them.
Have you made the play of Indel Royal with kicker my bubble snare, so next turn you can kick the bubble snare?
No. Oh, that's really nice. That's really good. I like that.
Yeah. The blue-green deck, I think, is quite good. It also has a light spell wizards theme, like I mentioned. I've had that twice so far where I had enough of that stuff going on. One was actually hard enough that I had Relic Amulet, the actual right name this time, of that pings or gets counters and then pings whenever you play wizard, instant, or sorcery. And then the other, I had like multiple of the 3/2 flying wizards that draw a card when they die. If you have a wizard plus multiple Tazeem Royal Mages, and ended up feeling like that was pretty supported. One thing to note about both black, white, and blue, green is they're not aggressive decks. They don't really rely on curving out as much. The black-white deck actually does have some good curve draws, but most of the time it's like, play my 2-drop, play my 3-drop, block and trade, play my thing, drain you, play an amulet or a relic vial, cast blood beckoning. Like, it's not looking to get their life total to 0 as fast as possible. And the blue-green deck especially, like, yes, you can get the game over with pretty quickly if you go, Vine Gecko, Risen Riptide, and then start kicking spells. But most of the time what happens is you're just kind of chilling. You're blocking with your 0/5s, kicking a spell, hitting in for 5. Then you start kicking your gargoyles, your Skyclave gargoyles, and just making a bunch of 4 or 5 flyers. And you're playing for the long game there. Yeah,
it almost plays out like how a blue-red deck normally would, where there's kind of a lot of setup, and then it all comes crashing down for your opponent over the course of a turn or two when you you kick it into the royal, you get in with a Riptide plus another creature, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I was at 20 and now I'm at 11. Okay, and you are 1 bubble snare or 1 more kicked anything away from just killing them.
Yeah, and it's got, a great late game, but also just a solidish mid game with cards like Riptide Elemental. It's a pretty important card for the deck.
Now, another one, though, that I have to mention here, Luis, my God, this is one of the best build-arounds we've ever had. It's Roost of Drakes. This is the blue enchantment uncommon.
This is a mythic uncommon.
It really is. It's got kicker for 2 and a blue. If you kick it, you get a 2/2 Drake. And if it's on the battlefield and anything was kicked, you get a 2/2 Drake.
Yes.
It's incredible to me because I don't remember seeing a build around card that gave you the first one as built in. Right?
Yeah.
Like when
it's actually funny. Both this and Cleric of Life's Bond do a lot of kind of self-solving, where Cleric of Lifespawn is like in a Johnny's Pride mate, where when you gain life, it gets countered, but it also has a life gain ability on it, so it fuels itself.
Like,
the Roost of Drakes pays you off for other kicker cards, but it's more than happy to front you the first one if you've got some extra mana lying around.
Right, and it also happens to have kicker. Like it's the
Which
way
means
that
if you have two of them, or
it triggers your Risen Riptides. Like I don't remember seeing a build around that fit into its archetype and was as powerful as this is. Do you remember what was it called from Innistrad? The 2 and a red, and it rewarded you for flashing back spells. Did 2 damage.
Oh, Burning Vengeance.
Burning Vengeance. Imagine if Burning Vengeance was like when it enters the battlefield, it does 2 damage to something. Right? It's like what? I just get to have one for free. That's what Roost of Drakes feels like, where they're just spotting you one, which feels. I mean, geez, this card is 1 mana off of like a playable-ish common, right? Like you'd probably, if it was 2 and a 3, 2/2 flyer, or 2 and a blue, 2/2 flyer, you'd be like, okay, when Drake, I guess I can play it. Truth is, in this set, that wouldn't quite be enough. But whatever, like you're overpaying by a tiny amount for a huge upside on this card. I'm blown away by it. It's definitely my Mythic Uncommon thus far.
Oh, totally.
And one of the best build-arounds I've ever seen. What about other archetypes? Oh yeah, blue-red wizard. So like I said, I've actually drafted this one multiple times now. I think it's really strong. My guess is that it isn't necessarily like the best possible archetype in the format. I'm still waiting to kind of try out a few other decks to see how things shake out, but I know that this will be in the upper half, based on what I've seen so far. All the pieces are there. And as we talked about in the set review, the relic, what is it called? The one you keep saying, not the vial, but the
Relic Amulet.
Yeah, the Relic Amulet is very strong in this deck because it is not hard to put in almost all wizards for your creatures and supplementing that with tons of instants and sorceries. It does it makes a few things a little awkward, like your bubble snares or whatever aren't quite as good because they're not triggering these things. But, your Into the Royals and all of that kind of stuff are great. The wizards are good cards anyway. The commons at wizards are solid, that you're not giving up a whole lot by playing them. And that thing will pick up a counter, once per turn at the minimum, and then it starts killing stuff. So that's really good. But even on its own, the deck certainly has the ability to just win games. Like it is not dependent on build-arounds to be great. It just has enough synergies built into it with instant sorceries and payoffs for that you can just, you can win anyway.
Yeah, and this deck does play like typical blue-red decks play, where it's got more aggressive elements than controlling ones, though it can kind of play both sides depending on on what you need when you need it to do. Yeah,
it does. It feels like I mentioned how the blue-green deck sometimes feels if you have a Riptide draw, which is that you're setting up a lot. You're kind of like, here's the Umara, whatever, the 1/3 flyer that gets bonuses off of instants and sorceries and wizards. And you've got one of those, and then you've got some other little thing. And then all of a sudden you like kill a creature, bounce a creature, Royal Eruption's absolutely incredible in this deck, of course. And then you get in for a bunch of damage, and all of a sudden your opponent's on their back foot, even though it felt like a relatively even match up until that point. I have liked, boy, the names are really bad right now. The 3/2 flyer, that when it dies, you draw a card if you control another wizard. That card's been totally solid for me because, again, it really isn't hard to have wizards in this deck. They are around. You can pick them up. You just need to make sure that you pay a little bit of attention. I really liked Cunning Geyser Mage in the deck. It works well as a 3-mana 3/2 in the deck because it is a wizard, so it'll trigger all of that stuff or be there for those triggers. And it also just is a nice attacker if you're into the roiling their blockers and getting in for damage. And then, of course, late game, it's very powerful as a mana war effect too. And then what was the one drop called again? The one that we talked about on our Crack-a-Pack? Not Spell Shield, but the other one. Whatever.
The Wind Robber Rogue?
No, the Chilling Trap.
Oh yes, the spell.
Right. Yeah. So we talked about it, but this is one that you want to, bump up your pick order a significant amount. It's actually pretty
nice that you get Chilling Trap kind of for free because nobody else wants them.
Yeah, it's really, and it is good. I ran 3 of them in a deck that was basically all wizards and spells, and it was really good. Like
10 plus wizards, then you can just play 3 Chilling Traps and you're more than fine.
Right. I mean, and there's times when you just cycle it. Like it really is a powerful card. It enables race situations too. You don't have to get a blowout in combat for it to make it worth it. If they attack you with a 4/4, and you Chilling Trap it just to not take the 4 damage and draw a card off of it, that's fine too. Like, you're still cantripping, you're still triggering a bunch of stuff. And it can fit into multiple spell turns as well, which is really nice. You know, sometimes you get a couple of cards that care about you, you know, like the Umara, whatever it's called, the gold uncommon for that archetype, right? You get that thing up and you can just kick off your turn by playing a Chilling Trap. It gets a trigger, you get a card, and then you can kind of map out how you want things to go. So keep an eye on those as well. What other archetypes you want to talk about, Luis?
Brief touch, because I'm not fully, I don't fully understand how to draft the deck as much as I have the other archetypes, but Red Black Party, I think, is a good one. I also was watching Andrea Mengucci's stream, and he says it's his favorite deck. So I figured I would take a look at it. And it basically is using a mix of the red and black removal spells plus the red and black creatures and Pack Beast, really important here too, to try to maximize party, because there's like some good red uncommons. If you're an aggressive enough deck and you can make the Electromancer make 2 or 3 red mana and play something else, like if you go 2-drop into the Electromancer, the 3/2 for 3 that adds a red mana for each party member you control, and then play like a Stonework Pack Beast afterwards, like you're getting a pretty good value for your cards. And then this is one of the decks that uses Thwart the Grave kind of the best. That's the 4 black, return a creature, then return a party member from your graveyard to play.
Basically,
and it costs 1 less per party member. And so here you're again really leaning on Pack Beast, and then trying to have a mix of all the other types, backed by the fact that red and black have all the best removal spells. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't tried that one myself either. We've both seen red white be pretty darn good.
Red White Warriors is totally fine.
I drafted it. It was fine. I didn't have a particularly good version of it, and it didn't play particularly well, but it was okay. I think I got to 4 wins on the ladder with it or whatever. So I don't know yet. It seems good though. Like normally, there is an aggressive landfall style deck in a Zendikar style format like this. And then we both found green-black counters to be a little medium. The payoffs just don't seem there like they do for the Wizards deck or the blue-green or the black-white. They're just okay. I feel like I'm playing kind of just baseline Magic, a bunch of power and toughness with some decent things going on, but rarely do I feel like I'm really doing it, you know, where I'm kind of like my synergies have broken through and made my deck extremely good. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I haven't been super impressed with the equipment. So
I wanted to ask you about that. So what about this new rule or not rule, but what about this experiment that they're trying here in Zendikar where you get it for free, but they kind of bump up the cost of the equip or the equipment or lower the effectiveness of it a little bit too?
I like it. I think it plays pretty naturally, and it lets you kind of it lets you play these cards the way I think most people naturally want to play equipment, because most people don't want to play equipment until the turn you can play and equip it, right? It just doesn't make that much sense to give them a preview of what you're going to do next turn. And the equipment effectively has haste, so there's no reason to play it before being able to use it. So I think this actually fits the natural play pattern of equipment better. From a design perspective, I like it a lot. Power level wise, the equipment in the set, aside from like Relic Axe, I haven't been super impressed with. Relic Axe is the 2 mana, gives +1/+1, but it gives +2/+1 if it's a warrior, and it has equip 2. And that one is a real beating in the Warriors deck. So that's one of the really good ones. It's just that red and white have a couple of payoffs for equipment at like uncommon and rare. And for the most part, I haven't found the equipment to be worth playing. Like the 1 in a red +2/+0 that it costs 2 in a red to equip. Utility Knife. Like these are just not cards I really want in my deck.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we like the rare one. I found
the Warriors theme to be better than the equipment theme.
Okay, yeah, wide and then pump them up rather than going too tall. A couple of cards just to hit on real quick here before we sign off. Canyon Jerboa, been a little disappointed by it. I kind of thought it would perform a little better than it has. It's felt fragile.
It's been not good.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you about Ruin Crab. This is the blue 0/3 and it mills for 3 on landfall. Mills your opponent for 3 on landfall. Seen some discussions about this card, about it being kind of a 1-card win condition. And I haven't found it to be that. What I found is that for the most part, my opponents do not have the ability to completely mill me out unless they have the 3 mana 6/6, millstone guy. Or, so basically a repeated way to do it. Or multiple ruin crabs or a completely dedicated deck, because the way that the archetype works for blue-black rogues is that it's really designed to try to get you to 8 cards in your graveyard rather than trying to get you to your whole library in your graveyard. Most of the cards, even if they do repeat, aren't insane. And if they do, they're creatures and they're maybe uncommon. So you're not going to end up with 5 of them in your deck. And if your opponent needs to, they can usually decide to use a removal spell on those and prevent you from decking them. And so I've seen people, though, just throw Ruin Crab into any old blue deck, into their blue-green kicker deck or into their blue-black deck, and just kind of say, well, you know, it feels good to play a land and start seeing my opponent's library get milled away. But in my experience, when they've done that, I've had a lot of success just simply ignoring it, because they haven't had ways to back it up outside of that rare or whatever, to really dump a bunch of cards in my graveyard. And yes, against another controlling deck, this absolutely can win the game on its own or demand a removal spell, which might be good enough if you didn't have to spend a high pick on it and only cost you 1 mana. But in many, many matchups, that is simply not the case, and it's a card that you can just overlook. And I haven't found that they have the way to really back up that plan if I kill it or if I can kill them before the Ruin Crab actually gets me. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think Ruin Crab is going to be a little overrated because people love milling so much.
That's what I think too.
Like, they're going to look at it and be like, ooh, I can mill them out. And yes, that can happen sometimes.
Yeah, it can sometimes.
Especially if you get 2 or if you get another like Relic Golem or enough of the Rogue's mill cards. But most of the time, I think it's going to be a kind of mediocre enabler. Like, it's a good enabler for the have 8 cards in your graveyard theme, but that theme hasn't struck me as one that you need to get to right away, and there's not huge payoffs. Like giving your creature +1/+1 menace, not a huge payoff.
No.
You know, letting your Windrobber sack to draw a card, not a huge payoff. So this isn't like payoffs we've seen in the past where there's not like a Roost of Drake's level payoff for having this thing going. So I think Ruin Crab is just in general a bit overrated for all the reasons you said.
Yeah. If you're playing best of 3, you can definitely sideboard in a Ruin Crab against really slow decks, or maybe against like blue-green where they'll have a tougher time killing it and it might be able to get them. The other thing to mention about it is we talk on the show a lot about best case scenario mentality. And I've been seeing a bit of this pop up, and I think that Ruin Crab also kind of tickles that, because when you think I'm going to put Ruin Crab in my deck and I will play it on turn 1 and I will not miss a land drop for the rest of the game, and if left unchecked, it can win the game. And if all of those things happen, then you're right. That is true. But you always also have to remember that sometimes you draw it on turn 8 when you really needed another attacker or a blocker that actually did something, and you don't have any lands left, or you're going to draw a land once every other turn for the rest of the game, and it's not going to do anything, right? And that happens more than people give credit for. I want cards that if I draw them in the late game can still do something, and Ruin Crab generally fails that. If it's a complete stall out, it can. But yeah, another card that's been actually a little better than I thought was Skyclave Squid. That's the 3/2 for 1 and a blue, and it can attack. It has Defender, but it can attack on landfall. It's kind of been beating down, and it does trade up. And I've kind of been like, you know what? And the 2-drop slot, Skyclave Squid's okay. Like I'll put that in my deck and not really be too sad about it. I didn't think that was going to be true.
It's more just, I think if you want to look at this card, it's closer to 1 and a blue 3/2 than 1 and a blue 3/2 Defender.
Right. So if you're in the market,
so,
you know.
Yeah. So don't give it, you know, lower marks because it looks like it has Defender. It kind of effectively doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Canopy Bailoff. This is the 4/3 for 3 and a G, and it gets +2/+2 on landfall. You know, it's just kind of scary and has been beating down. I've played it a couple times, and when I play it out, I think, this isn't one of my better creatures. And then I play a land, and it's like, it doesn't need to hit that many times for it to, you know, really affect the board. And when I've played it, it's at the very worst demanding a trade, and oftentimes there isn't a good block for it. I don't think it's amazing or anything like that, but I think I'm up a little on it from where I was coming in.
Yeah, it's a good card. I've definitely lost to it.
Same.
Where they just play it, and I'm like, really, a 4-mana 6/5? Like, how is this a common? But I guess
but
you know, that's kind of how it plays out.
Yeah, and then you have Demon's Disciple here. That's the uncommon, right?
Yes, it's 2 and a black for a 3/1. It's a cleric, and when it ETBs, both players sack a creature or planeswalker. And we were pretty low on the set review because cards like this tend not to be very good. But specifically with Relic Vial and Blood Beckoning, I found this card to be solid because it causes a Relic Vial trigger and gains you a life, and then you can get it back if you're playing like 2 Blood Beckonings in your deck. So I've actually liked the card. I've played it twice, which is it's not a card I expected to play very often. And so far I've played it in like 2 of the 4 Clerics decks I've drafted. So
okay, good to know.
That signifies to me that it's got a little more going for it than we initially thought.
So it has a home in the format. Yeah. You don't want to play it in everything, but it actually does have a place.
Note that it's really bad if you have Nahiri's Binding out. So either sequence right or just don't play the Disciple if you have like 2 bindings.
Right. And what about Cinderclasm?
So that's the 1 in a red instant, deals 1 to each creature, and you can pay a kicker and have it deal of a 1 red mana and have it deal 2 to each creature instead. And I have been very impressed with Cinderclasm. I think, really? Like we mentioned with Spikefield Hazard, there's just a lot of 1 toughness creatures in the format. It can snipe landfall creatures. Also, on the other side, I had it in a red-green landfall deck with Brushfire Elemental and Akumal Hound, where it works very nicely with your landfall creatures because you play a land, then play it on your turn and burn down all their small things. Against black-white or against red-black or against opposing landfall creatures, it just kills a lot of their stuff. So Cinderclasm, I think, just lines up nicely. This is a format with a decent amount of small things.
Before we go, then one more card that comes to mind is, and of course I don't remember the name of the stupid thing, but it's the 2 in a red, destroy an artifact or do 2 to a creature.
Oh, Molten Blast.
Yeah. So where are you at on that card? Because I see people playing it all the time, and I have avoided it largely. But is it? Do the things that you just said about Cinderclasm make it playable?
Well, they make it better in the sense that it's got more things it can kill, but I don't think this card's very good because you're paying. It's like Vanquish the Weak. You're going to pay 3 mana to kill a 2-drop, and the equipment mostly sucks. So destroying an artifact isn't even that good either. Yeah. So it's fine to put this card in your deck, but I haven't been impressed with the results of that.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe you hit a relic. That would be your better.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best thing you can get.
Because we like the cleric relic and the wizard relic quite a bit. I haven't played the warrior one, but I'm assuming it's good too.
Yeah. I think Relic Axe is quite good.
Okay. All right. Well, let's call it a show there, Luis. Hopefully that was useful to everybody listening to get those initial impressions right out the door. And that way, when you sit down to draft, you have a good idea of some of the archetypes, at least that we've liked early in the format. Of course, these things will change as the format progresses and as things get more solidified. This is, kind of week 1 stuff or week 1.5 or whatever. But having gotten a bunch of drafts in, we just couldn't wait to share with you what we had to say about Zendikar Rising in the early stages. We want to remind you about our sponsor. That's channelfireball.com. Make sure you head over there for any of your needs as far as Zendikar Rising goes. They got double masters in there. They got Zendikar Rising. Of course, they've got a full selection of singles. They've got videos. You can find all types of stuff on CFB Pro as well, where they go deep on those articles. Really in-depth, well-researched stuff for CFB Pro members. If you want to become a CFB Pro member, you can sign up. It's $5 a month, or it's $10 a month, but you'll get $10 in-store credit back at the end of every month. So there you go. Those are your options. If you do get anything over at Channel Fireball, please use the affiliate code LR. It lets them know that we sent you over, and we appreciate it when you do that. If you want to find us on social media, I'm Marshall_LR and Luis is LSV. You can find everything related to the show at lrcast.com. And that's going to do it for this week. We'll see you next week.
Marshall, I got to tell you, I'm very excited for our grudge match next week.
Yeah.
I'm starved for action, and this is definitely some pretty good action. So I don't want to get into power rankings because I don't think that is a useful exercise here. But I want to tell you what some of my preferred outcomes for this match are going to be.
Oh, okay. This is specific to you. Okay, I see.
If I got to pick what would happen, it would be that I go 3-0, you go 2-1, and BK goes 0-3, and we win our draft. That would be the best of all worlds.
Oh, that's the best long-term for sure, right?
But second best, actually, is me going 0-3, and then you and BK going 5-1 combined.
Yeah, that would be really great, too. I would love that. Oh, that's great.
Other things I would love to see is someone timing out and losing as a result.
Oh, that would be good.
which I think is very unlikely, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think all of us play online so much. Yeah.
The other is because it's a team draft, someone hook and cutting their own teammate. So the way that works, and let me give you a brief rundown on team draft, by the way, because this is something we don't talk about much. We haven't in a long time because it just doesn't really occur as often. In a 3-on-3 team draft, there's actually a lot of advanced strategy besides just drafting. Because in a normal pack, let's say we open 2 good white cards and a very good black card, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're going to take the good black card and you're going to pass the two good white cards. Mm-hmm. In a team draft, it actually doesn't work quite that way because you know what's going to happen if you do that? The person to your left who's not on your team is going to take a good white card. Then your teammate's going to take another good white card, and now your teammate's getting cut off. So,
by you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, by the other team.
Oh, by the other team. Right.
So what you want to do there actually is take the best white card, pass the black and the white card. The next person's going to take the black card almost assuredly because it's so much better. Your teammate then takes a good white card, and then you cut black. Mm-hmm. And because your goal, this is drafting, and the biggest difference between drafting in a team draft and drafting in an 8-player draft, team draft's zero sum. This is why we rail against hate drafting so much in 8-player drafts. Me taking a good card that Marshall could use in an 8-player draft is just completely not in my best interest. Like, I shouldn't really care how good Marshall's deck is. Even in a pod, it's still so much diminished by there's 7 other people. You won't even necessarily play them. But in a team draft, it's zero sum. You have to do a lot more hate drafting. If I open, a Shatter Skull Smashing and I know I can't play it, set aside the splashing aspect of it. Let's just say I open a red bomb and I'm black-white. Mm-hmm. If I think you're red, I need to take that card so you don't get it because it's going to lead to more losses than me taking whatever the best card is going to lead to wins for our team. Of course, the disaster scenario is I do that, so I give up my first pick, but then you're not playing red, and so you would have been forced to hate draft it. So reading the signals and trying to figure out what the people next to you are doing is super important. I just can't wait to teach the Lord's Limited a thing or two about team drafting.
Yeah, well, you're going to have to teach me more. We did an episode about it a while back where, because I can't remember, we were doing some stream thing like this where we were going to be team drafting and we talked about, or I think maybe I was going to be covering a team draft.
It was the Team Draft Super League, I think, was what was going on at that point.
Yeah, that does sound right. Yeah, I think that, you have a ton of experience in it, right?
Oh, I've done hundreds of team drafts.
Yeah, and Paul has too. And it's interesting because I've done hundreds of team drafts, but not that kind. You know, the standard issue for the, after GP drafts are to randomize the teams after the draft so that it feels more like a normal draft.
Effectively drafting like an 8-player draft because you don't know whose team.
Right. And that's why we did it that way, because we wanted that to be practice for what it was like to
Right. It makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. But it turns out it's quite a wrinkle when you do it this way. Yeah.
To give you kind of an example, if I go 1-2 and you go 0-3 when I'm passing to you, that's positive for my team.
Yes. And it just doesn't show up that way on the stat sheet, but you took one for the team. So
I have a lot of experience. The team of actually me, Chion, and Ifro won a couple team limited GPs with a couple top fours. Like,
I remember.
This is something that I've done a lot of, so that's why I'm so excited. Plus, I love a good-natured trash talking, and if they beat us, they get to rub it in our faces too. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, I love it.